So good morning. We will start the discussion. Can you see the screen? Okay. So by the way, so I have just received your papers couple of days back. So it may take some time to check, depending on my health. Probably next week I will try to finish checking and give you the marks. And at that time we will discuss the answers for the questions whenever I have finished checking. So anyway, let us continue. We were discussing about turbojet engines. So for jet engines, we were discussing two extra components are there as compared to industrial gas turbines. What were those extra components? One was the diffuser and one was the nozzle. Okay, so we had discussed about the diffuser, and we had discussed about nozzle in the case of nozzle being unchoked, means that the uh, exit pressure of the nozzle was equal to the ambient pressure, and the sonic velocity was not reached in the nozzle. So that case we had discussed. That is like a simple nozzle. So just based on the change in enthalpy, we can calculate what should be the exit velocity, and accordingly we had discussed that. And then we had discussed what is the thrust developed for that case. So which is the mass flow rate at the exit m dot a plus m dot f into the exit velocity v5 or v whatever is the means whatever variable you want to denote it with, minus the inlet thrust, which was m dot a into va. Okay, inlet momentum. So m dot a is the intake air and va is the inlet velocity of air, which is equal to the aircraft velocity. So based on this, we can calculate the thrust. So to calculate the thrust, we need the exhaust velocity of the exhaust velocity from the engine, which we could obtain based on the nozzle efficiency. You can go through the notes again to discuss. So we will discuss the other case today of choked nozzle, okay, which is also quite common. But before going to that, let us discuss a few parameters which are important for characterizing the jet engines, which are different from industrial gas turbines. So because for jet engines, the thrust is very important parameter. Unlike the, so efficiency is important, but ultimately it is the thrust which, or work output is important, but work output is not as important as the thrust, which determines actually what will be the size of the engine. So for a particular aircraft, you need a minimum amount of thrust for takeoff to occur, takeoff or landing to occur. So based on that, you want to design your engine. So for that, you want to know for unit mass flow rate, what is the thrust developed? So it becomes one of the most important parameters. Okay, so that's why we want to find out what is the thrust, and this is given by an equation which is known as thrust equation. It's actually a very simple equation, so there is nothing fancy here, but it's just based on common sense. So anyway, so for this type of calculation, we can just consider the engine to be a cylindrical pipe. Okay, and it has air coming in at some mass flow rate of m dot I with velocity vi, area of the intake, let us call it as ai, and pressure as the intake is pi, okay, which is equal to the atmospheric pressure. Typically it has to be atmospheric pressure, although I have denoted it with a separate atmospheric pressure pa. And at the exit, the pressure is P, which may or may not be equal to the atmospheric pressure. So if the exit occurs at a condition which is below the sonic speed, okay, so at that point or at that condition, the exit pressure will be equal to the atmospheric pressure. If the exit occurs at choked condition, means that the velocity has reached sonic condition, so the velocity cannot increase further. There cannot be any further pressure drop in the nozzle in that case. So the exit pressure will be higher than the atmospheric pressure. So there will be direct jump in pressure, sudden jump in pressure outside the exit. So exit will occur at PE, but outside we will have a different pressure PA, and so there will be a jump in pressure outside the nozzle. Okay. So we'll see this case anyway later on. Say the exit area is A, exit velocity is V, okay, and mass flow rate is m dot E. M dot E is nothing but m dot I plus mass flow rate of fuel, which is m dot F. So in that case, the thrust, which is denoted by F, okay, can be written as thrust is the change in momentum that has occurred. Okay. So what has occurred is that the inlet fluid has certain momentum and it goes out with a higher momentum. Okay. So the air or gas or whatever the mixture combustion products go out at a higher momentum, and as a result there is an equal and opposite thrust on the engine itself in the other direction, okay, to balance out. So that is the thrust that is imparted on the engine. So this is equal to the change in momentum of the air or the gases through the engine in the other direction. So we want to find out what is the change in momentum. So this is equal to the mass flow rate at the exit. So exit momentum minus inlet momentum. So exit momentum is m dot I into 1 plus F VE. Okay, m dot I into 1 plus F is the mass flow rate into V is the momentum minus m dot I VI, okay, which is the inlet momentum. So this is one contributing factor to the thrust. Apart from this, there is also a thrust which is known as pressure thrust. Okay, what is this pressure thrust? So say at this exit plane, the pressure is not equal to atmospheric pressure. Pressure is greater than atmospheric pressure. Okay. So if this is the case, P into AE, okay, this will be the force P minus, so outside pressure is PA. Okay. So P minus PA into AE is an additional force which is acting on the engine. Okay. And on the inlet side also, Pi minus Pa into Ai is an additional force which is acting on the engine, but Pi is equal to Pa. So at the inlet, there is no pressure thrust. Okay, no thrust because of the difference in pressure. But at the exit, there is a extra force. Thrust is nothing but a force, right? So there is an extra force which is present because of the difference in pressure. If there is a difference in pressure, so it will only occur in choked condition. If there is a difference in pressure, that will give rise to an extra force, which is P minus Pa into Ae. Okay, so this extra force is known as pressure thrust, and the first part of the thrust, which we have seen based on the momentum, is known as momentum thrust. So the total thrust can be written as summation of momentum thrust, which is m dot I, 1 plus a V minus Vi, plus the pressure thrust P minus Pa into Ae. Okay, and this pressure thrust is 0 in case the nozzle does not operate at choked condition. In that case, P will be equal to Pa. So there won't be any pressure thrust. And in most other cases also, pressure thrust can be negligible. Only in the cases where in military type of aircrafts where we have convergent nozzle, but the velocity is quite high. So in those cases, nozzle operates with an exit pressure which is much beyond the atmospheric pressure. Okay, the exit pressure or the choke pressure is much beyond the atmospheric pressure. So in that case, significant pressure thrust can be there. We'll see with examples. We'll solve some problems to understand how much or what are the relative effect of these parameters. What are the actual realistic values? So that is what I have summarized here. If nozzle is choked, P is greater than PA and there can be substantial pressure thrust. This occurs for convergent nozzles. For convergent divergent nozzles, there won't be any pressure thrust because for convergent divergent nozzle, always the exit pressure is equal to the atmospheric pressure, because you can expand the air in the divergent section of the nozzle also and accelerate it so that it goes out at atmospheric pressure. Okay. So, but we have discussed that convergent divergent nozzles are very rare for aircraft because it is very difficult to change the throat area for convergent divergent nozzles. For unchoked nozzle or for convergent divergent nozzle, P is equal to PA and pressure thrust is negligible. So in case pressure thrust is much less than momentum thrust, we can write the total thrust to be only equal to the momentum thrust. Okay, approximately equal to the momentum thrust, which is m dot I 1 plus a V minus Vi. So we can see that either we can increase the mass flow rate of air to increase the thrust, or we can increase the exhaust velocity. So later we will see that arbitrarily we cannot increase the exhaust velocity because that leads to reduction in something called propulsive efficiency. Okay, so there is lot of loss of kinetic energy. So as a result, we want this V to be as close to Vi as possible to increase the propulsive efficiency. We'll discuss this in a moment. So in those cases, it is better to have very large mass flow rate, and that is the idea behind turbofan engines. Later we will discuss this. In turbofan engine, the exhaust velocity, average exhaust velocity is lower as compared to turbojets, and the mass flow rate is kept higher to generate large amount of thrust. We will discuss these things later also if you don't understand. So at this point, it is sufficient to know that this is how thrust can be calculated. Okay. Don't try to memorize these things. It is just based on common sense. So the momentum at the exit minus the momentum at the inlet. Okay, changing momentum that is occurring. So if the fuel flow rate is negligible, we can write F as m dot I V minus Vi, which can be written as m dot I V minus m dot I Vi. Okay. So this m dot I V is known as the gross thrust. Okay, this is the momentum at the exit of the nozzle. So this is known as the gross thrust, and this inlet part is known as inlet drag. Okay, it is a part which is reducing the overall thrust, so that is why it is given this nomenclature. So it is called as inlet drag. Any questions? So we can describe or we can define a speed ratio. Although it is not necessary, it eases out some of the calculation. So we can define a speed ratio alpha, which is the ratio of the aircraft velocity, which is also equal to the intake velocity of air, Bi, divided by the exhaust velocity, V. Okay. So in that case, we can write the thrust like this. Like you can write it any other way also. You can take V as common, m dot I V 1 minus alpha. Also I can write. Okay. So the power that is developed is the force into velocity, right? Power is force into velocity. So force is the thrust. So F into velocity of the aircraft is Vi. Okay. So thrust into velocity F into Vi, which is equal to, for the simplistic case, it is equal to m dot I V minus Vi into Vi. This is for just for the simplistic case to show you or to analyze this. But when we are solving the actual problems, we need to go for the actual values, including the mass flow rate of fuel. Okay, we should not ignore that, because that will result in around 2% inaccuracy if we ignore the fuel flow rate. Anyway, so this is the mass power developed, m dot I V square 1 minus alpha into alpha in terms of alpha. So if we assume for a given exit velocity or given exhaust velocity V, we can find at what condition the maximum power occurs. If we take a derivative of this power with respect to alpha and equate it to 0. We can find out for what value of alpha we get the maximum power. Okay, given a fixed exit velocity. So if we take a derivative of this, you will get m dot I v square 1 minus 2 alpha. Okay, and that we are equating to 0. So 1 minus 2 alpha equal to 0, or alpha equal to half. So if Vi is half of Ve, okay, we get the maximum power from the engine. If Vi is half of Ve, Vi is so it means that the aircraft should fly at half the velocity of the exit velocity of the gases, half of the exit velocity of the gases. This is for maximum power, but this is not the only consideration. Okay, efficiency is the most important consideration that we will take a look in a minute. So for aircraft, it is very important define a specific thrust, which is the thrust per unit mass flow rate. Okay, this is similar to the specific work output for an industrial gas turbine, because this gives us a measure of what should be the size of the engine. If the specific thrust is more, it means that for a required total thrust, we need a smaller engine size, and which is very, very beneficial, because you have to carry the weight of the engine also. So smaller engine size means even less fuel that is required, and less fuel means you have to carry even less fuel. So that again is more beneficial. So it's like a chain reaction. So you want the engine to be as small as possible. So you want the specific thrust to be as high as possible. So this is defined as thrust per unit mass flow rate, F by m dot I. Okay. And is denoted by the symbol I. Again, these are not arbitrary. You should use the standard symbols. This is given by I. Okay. And for the simplistic case, ignoring the mass flow rate of fuel, this is equal to VE minus VI. Okay. So m dot I V minus Vi by m dot I. So V minus Vi. For the actual case, this is equal to 1 plus F V minus Vi. Okay. And if pressure thrust is there, we also have to divide this pressure thrust P minus PA into A divided by m dot I. That also has to be included. So for the takeoff, okay, when the takeoff velocity is almost equal to 0, it is obviously not 0, but when the aircraft is starting, velocity is very small. So in that case, we get the highest specific thrust. Okay, it's an important parameter for an aircraft. It is known as takeoff thrust, and you need the highest thrust during takeoff, and that also occurs during takeoff only. Means when the velocities of the aircraft is smallest. So this is approximately equal to V. Okay, we consider Vi to be negligible. So there we have seen two important parameters. One is the thrust, one is the specific thrust. The other important parameter is thrust specific fuel consumption. Again, this is analogous to the so we had a specific fuel consumption, okay, which was based on the work output or our industrial gas turbine. Okay, so in that case, it was defined as the mass flow rate of fuel required per unit power, that is, or per unit work that is generated. Okay. Here, the thrust specific fuel consumption is defined as mass flow rate of fuel that is required per unit thrust. Okay, because thrust is the more important parameter for an aircraft engine. So we define the thrust specific fuel consumption as mass flow rate of fuel by thrust F. So m dot F by F. Okay. So based on the other parameters that we have defined, m dot F is equal to nothing but m dot I into F, right? Mass flow rate of air into F. And this F, m dot I by F can be written as F by m dot I is I. So ultimately this leads to small f by I. So this thrust specific fuel consumption is equal to the fuel air ratio by the specific thrust. Okay, it's also a very important parameter. It is analogous to a like it gives a measure of the efficiency. So how less fuel will be required, or how much fuel will be required to generate unit thrust. Okay. So we need the thrust specific fuel consumption to be as less as possible, so that for unit thrust we need least amount of fuel. Any questions? So all these important parameters needs to be calculated when we do design a jet engine. This is true for whether it's a turbojet engine, turbofan, or turboprop engine, ramjet, scramjet, whatever is the engine. These are important parameters which characterize the performance of the engine. Okay, and there are some design parameters. Design parameters are parameters which are fixed initially while designing the engine, like the turbine inlet temperature, compressor pressure ratio, things like that. Then there are other parameters which are also fixed, like ambient conditions for which you are designing the engine. And after that, we want to see what are these characterizing parameters, like the thrust specific fuel consumption, things like that. So two more important parameters are there. One is, so there are two types of efficiency, okay, for an aircraft engine. So one is known as the propulsive efficiency, and there is something called thermal efficiency. Thermal efficiency we will discuss later. It is similar to the thermal efficiency that we know. Thermal efficiency, what do we know about thermal efficiency? It is the efficiency, or it gives a measure of how effectively we are converting the energy from the energy that is contained in the fuel to useful energy. Okay, useful energy in the sense that it is the energy that is generated by the engine. Okay, so there is certain amount of energy which is contained as chemical energy in the fuel. We are converting it into certain amount of energy given by the engine, or work output given by the engine. Okay, but that entire energy cannot be used up in an aircraft. Why it cannot be used up in the aircraft is because when the exhaust gases go out with a velocity, okay, so it carries a certain kinetic energy with it. That kinetic energy is not being utilized. It is getting lost in the atmosphere. So that is like a loss that is occurring. And as a result, although the engine may be developing a certain amount of energy, means it may be converting a certain amount of energy from the chemical energy available in the fuel, that entire energy cannot be used up for propelling the aircraft forward. Okay, I will explain this part in say we will go slowly here because this is very important, and the understanding is very important for this part, because sometimes students get confused here. So what will happen, say the let me go to a diagram. This will suffice. Say the aircraft is moving with a velocity vi, okay, and the exhaust gas velocity is ve. So for a person who is stationary from the outside, who is seeing the aircraft, okay, so I am standing on the ground and I am seeing an aircraft fly. So to me, the exhaust gases will be going out at a velocity of v minus vi. So although relative to the engine, the exhaust gases go out at v velocity, okay, but because the engine itself is moving forward with vi velocity for a stationary observer, so from a stationary reference point, the exhaust gas goes out with velocity v minus vi. Okay, so the kinetic energy of the exhaust gases from stationary reference point is half into m dot I into v minus vi square. Okay, this kinetic energy, so from the reference point of view, we are seeing a certain amount that the exhaust gas goes out at a certain velocity, and this kinetic energy is not being used up anywhere, right? This is lost to the atmosphere. So under what condition will this kinetic energy be negligible? Under what condition this kinetic energy which the stationary observer sees, it will be negligible when v is equal to vi. At the limit, when v is equal to vi, this kinetic energy, so the for a stationary observer at that point, the velocity of the exhaust gases is 0 relative to the reference frame. Okay, at that point, the kinetic energy which is lost is 0. But obviously that cannot be true because that will not propel the aircraft forward. Okay, because no thrust will develop in that case. So for thrust to develop, V needs to be greater than Vi. Okay, but in that case, some energy is lost, which means that the entire energy which was available cannot be used up for moving the aircraft forward. Okay, so only a certain part of energy is used properly for moving the aircraft forward, and this is known as useful propulsive energy or thrust power. Okay, this is the power which is used up for moving the aircraft forward. Okay, so this is like the useful part of the energy that is generated by the engine. Okay, engine is generating certain amount of energy, so it is converting the energy that is present in the fuel with a certain efficiency, say 40% efficiency, 50% efficiency. It is converting the energy that is present in the fuel with a certain thermal efficiency into some kinetic energy, but that or some momentum. So that entire energy cannot be used up. Only part of it can be used up for moving the aircraft forward. That part is known as the thrust power. Okay. So this propulsive efficiency is defined as this useful energy, thrust power, divided by the total energy that is generated by the engine, which is the thrust power plus whatever is the extra kinetic energy which is lost to the atmosphere. Okay. This we will see later. This denominator is also equal to the net kinetic energy that is generated by the exhaust gases relative to the engine. We will see that later. Okay, we'll revisit this part today again and see this. So this concept should be very clear. Okay, so useful energy divided by this useful energy plus unused kinetic energy. Okay, so what is the useful energy? This is the power developed for moving the aircraft forward, which we have already calculated, which is PT, which is F into Vi. Okay, thrust into velocity. So this is the thrust into velocity is the useful power that is being used up for moving the aircraft forward, right? So this is equal to F into Vi, and in the denominator we have PT, which is obviously F into Vi plus the wasted kinetic energy. What is this wasted kinetic energy? This is half m dot I. So m dot I is the mass flow rate of air. Half m dot I V minus Vi whole square. Okay, this is the relative. This is the velocity from an absolute reference frame. Okay, velocity of the exhaust gases from an absolute reference frame. Any questions? Is this part clear? This has to be very clear. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this is not the kinetic energy relative to the reference frame of the aircraft. This is the kinetic energy relative to the reference frame of a stationary observer. So anyway, if you simplify, if I take the simple assumption or the simple case where the mass flow rate of fuel is neglected, for our problems we cannot neglect the mass flow rate of fuel. Okay, there you should calculate based on the mass flow rate of fuel and considering all the factors. But in this simple case, just to analyze, we can ignore the mass flow rate of fuel. In that case, we have just seen that the thrust is equal to m dot I V minus Vi. Okay, so thrust power is m dot I V minus Vi into aircraft velocity Vi, and in the denominator we have m dot I V minus Vi into Vi plus half m dot I V minus Vi whole square. Okay, this is assuming negligible F and negligible mass flow rate of fuel and negligible pressure thrust. So you can cancel the m dot I from the numerator and the denominator, and V minus Vi from the numerator and denominator. So we will be left with Vi divided by Vi plus half V minus Vi. Okay, which is equal to this can also be written as 1 by half plus half V by Vi, or 2 by 1 plus V by Vi. Okay. Let us look at a few conditions, few situations. So when Vi is 0, okay, the thrust, the propulsive efficiency is 0. Okay. When Vi is 0, propulsive efficiency is 0. This goes to a very large value and it becomes 0. You can see from here that Vi is 0 means propulsive efficiency is 0. This occurs at the takeoff condition, means obviously Vi cannot be exactly equal to 0, but when Vi is very small, the propulsive efficiency is small. But at that point, the thrust is maximum. Okay, when the during takeoff, the thrust is maximum because when the Vi is 0, this inlet drag is 0. So you get the maximum thrust. Okay. So for maximum thrust condition, actually, we cannot operate at maximum thrust condition because propulsive efficiency will be 0. Okay. Propulsive efficiency is equal to 1, highest, when V is equal to Vi. So when V is equal to Vi, this V by Vi is 1. So 2 by 1 plus 1, which is equal to 1. Okay. But at that condition, when V is equal to Vi, the thrust is negligible. Okay. If we ignore the fuel flow rate, thrust is equal to 0. So again, we cannot operate at that condition. Although the propulsive efficiency is highest, the thrust is 0. For the case of maximum power, you can put the value. Although power is not the important parameter here, but if you plug in the value of alpha equal to half, which we had calculated for maximum power, in that case, the propulsive efficiency is 2 by 3. Okay. So a few important insights actually can be drawn from here. And these are very critical insights. So what happens is that, say you design an aircraft which has a very large exhaust velocity, like a turbojet engine. Okay. We design an engine, turbojet engine. So the exhaust velocity of turbojet is quite high. However, the aircraft we want to operate it at a lower velocity, like a passenger aircraft, like a velocity just below the sonic velocity, okay, Mach 0.9. But the exhaust gas goes out at very large velocity. So in that case, it is not very efficient because V minus Vi will be very large, or V will be much greater than Vi. Much of the energy will be lost as unused kinetic energy, okay, to the atmosphere. That is why I was telling before that turbojet engines are used generally for military aircraft, where you want your aircraft to fly at very high velocity. Okay, because if you are designing an aircraft for a low velocity, but if your exhaust gas velocity is high, although it will generate a lot of thrust, much of the energy will be lost to the atmosphere as unused kinetic energy, and the propulsive efficiency will be lower. Okay. So for passenger aircraft, what do we want? Our aircraft is flying at a certain velocity, Mach 0.9. So you want your exhaust gas velocity to be as close to that velocity, aircraft velocity, as possible. Okay. You want your exhaust gas velocity to be much lower. And that is why we will see later that is why the turbofan engine was developed. Because in turbofan engine, there are two nozzles. So one is the core section through which the velocity is very high, exhaust gas velocity is very high, it is like the turbojet. But there is an outer nozzle through which the exit velocity is very small, okay, relatively very small. And so the average exit velocity of the combustion products and the air mixture is quite low as compared to turbojet. So it is much nearer to the aircraft velocity. As a result, we get much higher propulsive efficiency for passenger aircraft when we use turbofan engines. But the main problem then, what is the main problem? If you want your VE to be much closer to Vi, the thrust will be reduced because thrust is dependent on V minus Vi. So if V is closer to Vi, the thrust is reduced. So in that case, there is another option to increase thrust. That option is to increase the mass flow rate. That is why you will see that turbofan engines are very large in size, has very large cross-sectional area. So the thrust is increased by increasing the mass flow rate. Although the although the exhaust velocity is lower, the mass flow rate is quite high. So turbofans actually generate huge amount of thrust, even though the exhaust velocity is lower. But for military aircraft, which operate at very high velocities, cruise velocities is around Mach 2 or even higher, Mach 2.2, like this. So in that range, turbofans are not able to generate sufficient exit velocity, sufficient exhaust velocity. Okay. So in that case, you need turbojets, because your exhaust velocity obviously has to be higher than the aircraft velocity for propelling the aircraft forward. So turbojets are needed. And that is why you can now understand that we will see later that ramjets, which are much more optimum at around Mach 3 or Mach 4, so at that high speeds, okay, so that cannot be used for lower velocity military aircrafts, because then the propulsive efficiency will be quite low. So only if you can design an aircraft which will fly at Mach 3 or Mach 4, in those cases only ramjets will make sense. Similarly, scramjet engines, which we'll briefly discuss, are like only work efficiently at very high velocities of say Mach greater than Mach 5, so around Mach 8, Mach 10 at that kind of velocity. Obviously, they have not been designed for practical purposes. Only experimental designs have been developed, the prototypes. But in those kind of velocity, at those kind of velocities only, it will be useful. But if operating an aircraft at very large velocity leads to other problems. So passenger aircraft, we have discussed that you cannot accelerate the aircraft at very large values, right? For military aircraft, pilots are trained; they can withstand large amount of acceleration. But passengers will feel uncomfortable if the acceleration goes beyond 0.1 g itself. Okay, pilots can sustain 4g, 5g. It is nothing for them. 4g, 5g kind of acceleration. Okay, even Formula One car drivers also experience around 3 to 4g of acceleration. But for passengers, generally the acceleration is kept below 0.1 g. Okay, so as a result, for shorter distances, you cannot accelerate your aircraft to a very high velocity because the distance is not sufficient. We have discussed this previously also. We'll discuss again later. For very short distances, that is as a result, even turbofan also does not make sense, because your aircraft will not be able to reach that kind of velocity of Mach 0.9. In that cases, we use turboprop aircrafts, which operate at a lower velocity and has the highest propulsive efficiency at those kind of velocities. Turboprops is like an extreme version where the mass flow rate is even higher, but the exit velocity of the air, although it's not like a nozzle, it is just the air being pushed by the propeller, but that velocity, average velocity, is much lower. So the propulsive efficiency is very high at lower velocity of the aircraft. So you will see that for small duration flights, turboprops are used, very short distances. But for larger durations, turbofans are used. Obviously, for very long distances, even turbojets could have been used, and it had been used, supersonic aircraft for Concorde. But designing is very difficult, and there are other practical limitations like the sound. It creates a lot of noise, just exhaust supersonic aircraft. So there are practical limitations to that. So most of the long distance passenger aircraft nowadays operate on turbofans. Anyway, so this parameter, propulsive efficiency, is a very important parameter. Okay, and this is not equal to the efficiency of the engine. The engine is converting the chemical energy of the fuel to some mechanical energy, or to energy which can be used for but the entire energy is not being used up for propelling the aircraft forward. Okay, so the second part, the conversion of the energy that is generated by the engine into useful energy, is known as or is given by the propulsive thrust. So propulsive efficiency gives a measure of how well the propulsive device is being used for propelling the aircraft. And this is different from the efficiency of energy conversion, as I am saying again and again, because otherwise the students get confused. Okay. So for different types of aircraft, such as turbojet, turbofan, turboprop, exhaust velocity V is different. So they are more suitable at different aircraft velocities. Okay. So they have higher propulsive efficiencies at different aircraft velocities. Turbojets have highest propulsive efficiency at very high aircraft velocities. Turbofans at very low aircraft velocities. Sorry, medium aircraft velocities, and turboprops at low aircraft velocities, okay, as we have discussed. Any questions? So we will now define the second efficiency, which is the thermal efficiency. This is the thermal efficiency that we know. This is how well the energy which is contained in the fuel is being converted to propulsive power. Okay, not the thrust power, the total amount of power that was available for propelling the aircraft forward but could not be used. Okay, so this is equal to the net change in energy in the engine. Okay, net change in energy is the energy of the exhaust gases minus the energy of the inlet gases. So energy, exhaust gas energy is so relative to the aircraft. Okay, so relative to the engine. So relative to the engine, the aircraft exhaust gas energy is half m dot I 1 plus f v square. Okay, basically half into mass freight into exhaust velocity square. Okay, and the inlet energy is half m dot I vi square. So this is the net change in energy that the engine is creating. Okay, so relative to the engine, this is the net change of energy that is occurring, and this change in energy is being or this extra energy is being produced by converting the chemical energy of the fuel. So the energy that is used up is mass flow rate of fuel into calorific value of the fuel. So mass flow rate of fuel into the energy of the fuel per unit mass of fuel. Okay, so this we can write as m dot I into f into QCV. Okay. So we can write this as, if you ignore if we can ignore the fuel flow rate f, okay, for the numerator, okay, assume it to be very small as compared to 1. This is almost equal to half v square minus vi square by f into QCV. Okay, so when v is equal to vi, thermal efficiency is actually 0, although the propulsive efficiency is highest. Okay, but actually the engine is not producing any useful work, because whatever is the inlet velocity of the air, it is just existing at the same velocity without any increasing kinetic energy. Okay, so at that condition, the thermal efficiency will be 0, although the propulsive efficiency will be 1. Okay, so eta thermal gives a measure of how well the energy in the fuel is getting converted to kinetic energy, right? What is the increasing kinetic energy of the gases? So the overall efficiency of the engine is so it is the product of the thermal efficiency and the propulsive efficiency. Why is it the case? So there is a certain amount of energy in the fuel, okay, which is equal to the calorific value into mass flow rate of fuel. So this energy is being used to generate propulsive power, okay, which is equal to the change in kinetic energy that is being the increase in kinetic energy caused by the engine. Okay, so now this energy was available for the engine for moving the aircraft forward, but could not be used entirely for moving the aircraft forward. So part of the energy was used for moving the aircraft forward, and part of the energy is getting lost to the atmosphere as unused kinetic energy. Okay, so that conversion is given by the second factor, which is the propulsive efficiency. So the overall efficiency is eta. It can be denoted as eta O, which is equal to thrust power, okay, divided by the divided by the amount of energy that is available in the fuel. Okay, m dot f into QCV. This is equal to propulsive efficiency into thermal efficiency. So this propulsive power, as I was saying, okay, this propulsive power, which is the change in kinetic energy that is occurring in the engine, this is equal to the thrust power. Okay, this is equal to the thrust power plus the unused kinetic energy. Okay, so whatever was the denominator in this case is actually the energy which is being generated by the engine. Okay, so only half, or not half, only part of it was being used up as thrust power, and rest of it is getting lost to the atmosphere. So we will be able to see that PT plus half m dot I V minus Vi square. So this part, PT was the thrust power, and half m dot I V minus Vi square is the kinetic energy lost to the atmosphere. This should be equal to half m dot I V square minus half m dot I Vi square, ignoring the value f, half m dot I V square minus half m dot I Vi square. Okay, this should be equal to the change in kinetic energy of the gases. So we should try to see that. Okay, so f into Vi plus half m dot I V minus Vi square. Okay, so this f we can write as m dot I thrust. Remember what was thrust? Thrust is mass flow rate into change in momentum. So m dot I, sorry, mass flow rate into change in velocity, basically change in momentum. So m dot I V minus Vi into Vi plus half m dot I V minus Vi square. If you take m dot I V minus Vi as common, we are left with Vi plus half V minus Vi. Okay, so this is equal to m dot I V minus Vi into half. So this Vi minus half Vi gives half Vi, and we also have half V. So half V plus half Vi. So which leads us to half m dot I V square minus Vi square. This is the same as this value. Okay, means half m dot I V square minus Vi square, ignoring the mass flow rate of the fuel. So we can see that basically the thrust power plus the unused kinetic energy is nothing but equal to the propulsive power, which is the net change in kinetic energy that the engine is causing. Okay, how efficiently the engine is converting the energy, chemical energy in the of the fuel into kinetic energy. Okay, now we could not use the entire kinetic energy because some of it is getting lost to the atmosphere. So that's why we had the propulsive efficiency. Okay. Any questions on all this, whatever we have discussed till now today? Any other questions from other students? Because these are, you have to be very clear about this. What are these? What is the kinetic energy that is lost to the atmosphere? What is the kinetic? So all these are different terms. Kinetic energy to lost to the atmosphere is relative to the stationary observer, right? Because that is the actual kinetic energy that is getting lost to the atmosphere. But say V is very close to Vi. In that case, for a stationary observer, the kinetic energy that is lost is very small because V minus Vi. So the velocity of the exhaust gases relative to the stationary reference frame is very small. But relative to the engine, the exhaust gases still go out at V velocity. Okay. So it is still converting the inlet momentum m dot I Vi to m dot EVE. So relative to the engine, the kinetic energy is different. Okay, kinetic energy is a relative term, right? Kinetic energy can be defined for different reference frame. So if I am, say, sitting in a car, relative to the car, my kinetic energy is 0. But for a stationary observer, my kinetic energy is quite high. Okay, so it's a relative term. So relative to the aircraft, the change in kinetic energy is being caused by the aircraft engine. Okay, but relative to a stationary observer, the loss in kinetic energy is actually energy which is getting lost to the atmosphere, which is unused. Okay, so these are two different things. You should not get confused. So we'll take a break here, and then we'll continue after 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. So we will we will continue. Can you still see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions on these different parameters? So we have defined a few parameters today, which are used for characterizing all these jet engines, means turbojet, turbofan, turboprop, ramjet, scramjet. Okay. What are these parameters? One is the thrust, very important parameter. Second is the specific thrust. Okay. So both are analogous basically. So specific thrust is the thrust per mass unit mass per. Then we have defined thrust specific fuel consumption. Okay, and then propulsive efficiency and the thermal efficiency. Okay, so these are our this basically gives the characteristics of the aircraft. So this gives us a measure of how the aircraft is, how well the aircraft is working. And when we design an aircraft, we design it based on certain inlet or input condition. Input conditions are the compressor pressure ratio and the turbine inlet temperature. We have already discussed this for industrial gas turbine. Apart from that, for jet engines, there are additional parameters to be considered. One is the aircraft velocity at which you want it to operate most of the time. Okay, so that is cruise velocity, but also you want to consider the maximum thrust, takeoff thrust. Yes, so also you want to design for that, and then there are other considerations like the ambient conditions, because the ambient conditions will play a critical part here. Ambient pressure and temperature, which will vary with different altitudes. So that also is very important. Okay, so all these are design input parameters when we are designing a aircraft engine, whatever is the type of the engine. Then for other types like turbofans, we will see that additional parameters are there. How much air is going through the inside region and how much air is going through the outside region. We'll define a ratio called bypass ratio. All this we'll discuss in due time. Anyway, so we had seen the case of conversion nozzle at normal condition, means when the nozzle is not choked. Okay. So what was the case? Long time back we had discussed before the exam. Let us take a look at that quickly, because today's discussion is related to that. Okay, so this was the aircraft engine schematic diagram, and what were the processes if you remember? So the inlet condition is aircraft velocity is VA. So relative to the aircraft, the inlet velocity is VA, and this kinetic energy is used up for increasing the pressure and temperature of the fluid. So basically, it's like a compression process. Okay, without the compressor. So it is done in a diffuser, and the air goes out from the diffuser at state 0, 1. Then from in the compressor, it gets compressed from 0, 1 to 0, 2. Then in the combustion chamber, the enthalpy increases from 0, 2 to 0, 3 at constant pressure, and then we have the expansion in the turbine from 0, 3 to 0, 4. Okay, 0, 3 to 0, 4, and then the rest of the expansion occurs in the nozzle to generate the exhaust velocity, which is ultimately our goal, because that will result in the thrust. So you want as much exhaust velocity as can be generated. Okay. So that occurs in the nozzle, and what happens in the nozzle is that the inlet condition is 0, 4, and if it was an ideal nozzle, means there were no frictional losses, the exit condition would have been 5s. So the exit pressure, so in non-choked condition, when the nozzle is not choked, choking means that the velocity has reached the sonic velocity at the exit. I will discuss it in a moment. But in normal operation, in normal condition, when the nozzle is not choked, the exit velocity from the nozzle is less than the sonic velocity. Okay. Say if the sonic velocity is 300, say 400 meter per second, the exit velocity may be 300 meter per second. And the inlet velocity to the nozzle is very negligible, very small. Okay. So this change in kinetic energy from the inlet kinetic energy to the exit kinetic energy occurs due to the reduction of enthalpy in the nozzle. Okay. So if you use first law, you will know that H plus, so H0, sorry, H4 plus half V4 square is equal to H plus 5, H5 plus half V5 square. Okay. Anyway, so ideally, if there were no frictional losses, we would have reached this 5s point. But because of frictional losses, what is happening? Although the exit pressure is still equal to the ambient pressure, because the nozzle exit is kept at the ambient condition, right? You cannot fix that exit pressure. Nozzle is open to the atmosphere. So whatever will be the atmospheric pressure, automatically that will be the pressure at the nozzle exit. You cannot control that. So, however, what happens is that because of frictional losses, the entropy increases. So we get less kinetic energy generated in the nozzle. Okay. So the total enthalpy remains same. Remember that there is no change in total enthalpy because there is no work input or no heat loss from the nozzle. Okay. So the total enthalpy still remains same. So H05 is equal to H04. What is total enthalpy? It is the summation of static enthalpy plus kinetic energy. Okay. But the static enthalpy at the exit is higher as compared to the ideal case. Okay. For the real case, it is higher because you have gone to a higher entropy. And as a result, the change in enthalpy that is obtained is lower. As a result, we get less kinetic energy change. Okay, that we had seen previously. And this is defined using a nozzle efficiency eta n. So we can define the nozzle efficiency as H04 minus H5, okay, divided by H04 minus H5s. So the H04 minus H5 represents the actual change in kinetic energy, and H04 minus H5s denotes the ideal change in kinetic energy. Okay, so this is equal to half V5 square, and the denominator is equal to half V5s square. V5 is the actual exit velocity, and V5s is the ideal velocity, the velocity which we should have obtained if there was no frictional loss. So this can also be written in terms of temperature as T04 minus T5 by T04 minus T5s. Okay. Remember that H04 is equal to H05 is equal H04 is equal to H05, and H05 is equal to H5 plus V5 square by 2. Okay. And also H04 is equal to H5s plus V5s square by 2. It's clear from the diagram. Assuming the nozzle inlet velocity to be negligible. So in that case, when the nozzle was not choked, when P5 was equal to PA, we could easily calculate what will be the. So what is needed to be calculated? Ultimately, we need the velocity at the exit to be calculated to calculate the thrust. So to calculate the exit velocity, we want to know what is the change in enthalpy that is occurring. So that is based on the change in temperature. So the change in temperature we could obtain using the pressure ratio. P04 we will obtain after calculating the conditions of the turbine, and P5 is the ambient pressure in this case. So T04 by T5s, this for this isentropic process, T04 to T5s, we can write T04 by T5s to be equal to P04 by P5 to the power gamma minus 1 by gamma, where gamma is the gamma of the gas here, okay, which we take as 1.333. So this can give us the temperature for the ideal case, T5s. So once you know the temperature for the ideal case, we can find out what will be the temperature for the actual case based on the nozzle efficiency. So which will give us the value of T5. Okay. Because T04 is already known from the turbine exit condition, and T5s we have just calculated. Okay. So T5 can be obtained using nozzle efficiency. And once nozzle efficiency, once T5 is known, we can find out what is the change in kinetic energy that is occurring in the nozzle. Okay, so V5 square by 2, we had obtained a relation for that. So V5 square by 2 is nothing but Cp of gas into T04 minus T5, okay, change in enthalpy. So that can be represented in expression form like this. It is not needed because we can just calculate numerically and we will get the exit velocity. Okay. So this process is very simple, although it looks like a complicated expression here. When calculating, it is actually very simple. So let us now see what is the case when the nozzle is choked. Okay. So what happens is that in a typical nozzle, let us ignore that it is an aircraft nozzle at this moment. Just consider a nozzle. What is a nozzle? It's a very simplistic device where the cross-sectional area decreases. Okay. In simple cases, cross-sectional area can increase also, but that is for supersonic flow. For subsonic nozzle, the cross-sectional area decreases. So as a result, for the same mass fluid, the flow is accelerated, the velocity increases. Okay, in the nozzle. That is the basic principle of a nozzle. Very simple, one of the most simplistic devices. So now this, how much will be the velocity at the exit? It will depend on the pressure ratio. So if I consider a typical nozzle, okay. Do we have any diagram? For the diffuser. Let me try to try to draw. Okay, let us consider that we have a nozzle like this. You can see the whiteboard, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this is inlet is Vi and exit is Ve. Okay, and pressure at the inlet. So let us consider that the nozzle is connected to a very large reservoir. What is a reservoir in this kind of, like in thermodynamics? How do we define a reservoir? So these reservoir conditions are pressure is Pi and temperature is Pi, density may be rho I. Okay. So reservoir is a very large, means it contains a large amount of fluid such that even though the flow is occurring from the reservoir, the conditions of the reservoir does not change. Okay. So even though some flow is going out, the conditions still remain same. So that is what we call as a reservoir in thermodynamics. So say the pressure at the inlet is Pi, okay, and at the exit initially I have Pi pressure, okay, at the exit I have initially Pi pressure. So at the inlet I have pressure of Pi and initially at the exit also I have PI pressure. Okay. So what will be the mass flow rate through the nozzle? Zero, because there is no pressure difference. Now I keep on decreasing the pressure. Okay, I keep on decreasing the pressure, and say I have decreased the pressure to some pressure PE. Okay, I have decreased the pressure to some pressure PE. So in that case, what will happen? Mass flow rate will increase. Okay, there will be some mass flow rate to the nozzle. Okay, because of the pressure difference. Because at the inlet we have larger pressure, and at the exit we have a lower pressure. So it will drive the flow forward. Okay, and as a result, there will be an increase in. So at the inlet there will be inlet velocity Vi, and at the exit there will be an exit velocity Ve. So if we decrease the pressure further, okay, saying up to this condition, what will happen to the mass flow rate and the exit velocity? So this is the new P. Okay, P is equal to P1, P is equal to P2. Mass flow rate will increase, right? You guys should respond when I ask a question. So mass flow rate will increase, exit velocity will also increase, right? So if I keep on decreasing the pressure, okay, what will keep on happening to the mass flow rate and the exit velocity?
They will keep on increasing.
Keep on increasing. Can they increase to a unlimited velocity, or unlimited velocity, or there is a limit to which it can increase?
There's a limit, sir. Up to
There is a
Mach number.
limit. It is equal to the Mach number equal to 1. Okay, sonic velocity. Why is there is limit? Why cannot the velocity increase further if I decrease the pressure?
Sir, that information cannot travel backwards if we decrease the pressure at exit.
That
Means
is
pressure.
true. That is true. Yes, that is one way of putting it. Okay, but say from practical, yes, that is correct. What you are saying is correct. Information cannot travel. Okay, that is the basic definition for a choke condition. But because the information can only travel at sonic speed. But okay, let me put it in another way. How can we increase the velocity further to indefinite velocity, even higher velocity?
Increasing the temperature.
No, temperature I cannot increase. It is fixed. Inlet conditions are fixed.
So
Ambient conditions.
then we have to use divergent section.
Correct. So then we have to use a divergence section. Okay, if you have a divergence section, we can indefinitely keep on increasing the velocity. Okay, so the problem is that for subsonic flow, the velocity increases with decreasing cross-sectional area. Okay, like in a convergent nozzle. For supersonic flow, velocity increases with increase in cross-sectional area. This can be easily derived. In fact, we have done this in our power plant course. Those students who have taken power plant engineering with me knows that. But you don't need to worry about it, because this anyway is not required in our course, in our gas turbine course. But you should just know that for subsonic flow, we can easily find using 1D analysis that the velocity for subsonic flow increases with decreasing cross-sectional area. That is our day-to-day experience. Okay, we have a funnel. So if I pour something, velocity will increase if the cross-sectional area decreases. Okay, but counterintuitively, what happens at supersonic flow is that if the area increases, the velocity increases. Okay, If the area decreases, the velocity decreases. So for supersonic flow, a diffuser is like a convergent shape device and a nozzle is a divergent shape device. So because this is a convergent part, once you reach nozzle, once the nozzle exit velocity reaches sonic velocity, it cannot increase further, right? It cannot increase any further unless there is a divergent section. Okay. So as a result, we reach a choked condition. Okay. So this is the choked condition. At this pressure, the condition is reached. This pressure is known as critical pressure, PC or P star. Okay. This is denoted by PC or P star. Critical pressure. Okay, so if I decrease the pressure further at the outside, okay, what will be the exit pressure of the nozzle?
P star only, then it will decrease.
Correct, because there cannot be any change within the nozzle anymore. It has already. So what has happened is that we have reached the maximum mass flow rate because highest velocity has been reached, which is the sonic velocity here. So we have reached the maximum mass flow rate. That's why we are calling it as choked nozzle. It is choked. It cannot increase. So this will be the just outside. So the exit pressure will still be equal to P star. Then there will be a sudden jump outside, and here it will be equal to PA. Okay, outside pressure or ambient pressure. So in other way, if the ambient pressure is such that it is lower than the critical pressure, if the ambient pressure is greater than the critical pressure, so the ambient pressure PA is such that it is greater than the critical pressure, then we will have the nozzle operating in an unchoked condition, and we have already discussed that part. If the ambient pressure is less than the critical pressure, okay, the nozzle will operate in a choked condition. Okay, and that is the part that we are going to discuss. And this depend on the pressure ratio. Okay, so this depend on the pressure ratio, which is known as the critical pressure ratio. Okay, so if the PI change, obviously P star will also change. So PI by P star can be actually calculated. Okay, what will be the ratio of PI by P star or inlet to exit pressure? This is known as critical pressure ratio. So if the critical pressure ratio, in other way, the critical pressure ratio actually is denoted by this exit pressure by this inlet pressure. So P by PI, if this pressure ratio is less than the critical pressure ratio, nozzle is unchoked. If the pressure ratio is greater than the critical pressure ratio, sorry, if it is greater than the critical pressure ratio, it is unchoked. Okay, if it is less than the critical pressure ratio, the nozzle is choked. Okay, so if the say typical critical pressure ratio is around 0.5 to something, okay, for normal atmospheric condition. So if the pressure ratio is 0.4, it means that the exit pressure is 0.4 times the inlet pressure. In that case, the nozzle will be choked. But if the pressure ratio is 0.7, it means that the exit pressure is 0.7 times the inlet pressure. In that case, the pressure will be something like here and nozzle will be unchoked. Is this clear to all of you?
Yes.
Okay. So let us come back to our nozzle now. So in this case, the exit pressure will become equal to PE, not the ambient pressure. Okay. So that is why I was saying that some additional thrust will be generated. P minus PA into A, this pressure thrust will be generated only when the nozzle operates at choked condition. Otherwise, for unchoked condition, P will be equal to PA and this will go to 0. Okay. And now we have to find out the exit velocity in a different way. Okay. So what will be the exit velocity? This velocity is equal to the sonic velocity. Okay. In choked condition, remember the sonic velocity can change with temperature. So for choked condition, the temperature is denoted by T star or TC. Okay. And the pressure is denoted by P star or PC. These are known as critical temperature and critical pressure. And the sonic velocity also is correspondingly C star. Okay. It is corresponding to the sonic velocity for T star temperature. So this is the sonic velocity. And this is the velocity at the exit of the nozzle. Okay. So we have to find this value to find the thrust. So let us try to see that. So this discussion just I've summarized here. If the pressure difference across the convergent nozzle is large, okay, the nozzle will operate with choked condition. That's what we have just discussed now. So if you want to increase the exhaust velocity, convergent divergent nozzle can be used, but it is difficult in practice to build a convergent divergent nozzle with variable throat area. Why do we need variable throat area?
Velocity of flight can be changing during course.
Velocity of the flight will change, correct, and as a result the mass flow rate of air will change, because you don't have the control over the mass flow rate, right? So mass flow rate of air depends on the intake area and the velocity. Intake velocity is equal to the velocity of the aircraft. So because the mass flow rate can change, but at choked condition the choked velocity is fixed. So the only way you can cater to different mass flow rates is to change the throat area. Throat area is the area of the throat. So what is the throat? Throat is the section with the smallest area. So this area, okay. So only way the mass flow rate for different mass flow rates can be accommodated is that the throat area can change. So we need a variable throat area, and that is very difficult to build in a convergent divergent nozzle. It can be done. It will be very costly, but otherwise, even aircraft which has quite large exhaust velocities also, or designed with very large velocities also, are designed with convergent nozzles only. Okay, so what happens is that they operate at choked condition, and the extra this extra pressure drop it used up for pressure thrust. Pressure thrust is not as efficient as momentum thrust. You want the extra pressure to be used up for generating momentum. Okay, so if you had a convergent divergent nozzle, it would have been more efficient. But because it is too difficult to or too costly or expensive, we use a convergent nozzle, and we get at least some additional benefit as pressure thrust. But for applications where these are like cost is not a very critical factor, like a space shuttle, so there you will have very high velocities, and you will see the convergent divergent nozzle. You can clearly see if you see a picture of a space shuttle, you will see that the nozzles are divergent. You can see the divergent section of the nozzle. Convergent sections are not visible because they are the inside, but the divergent sections are clearly visible. We'll see that the area is increasing. For typical aircrafts, we use only convergent nozzles, but if you are designing a scramjet aircraft, then you might think about convergent divergent nozzle. Okay. So hence, even for supersonic aircraft, unless the aircraft speed is too high, like a scramjet engine, convergent nozzles are used, and throat area can be changed to accommodate variable mass flow rate. Okay, by overlapping flaps, or there are different designs. Okay, and if the sonic condition, if the nozzle operates at sonic condition, it's choked, right? The maximum velocity at the exit is equal to the speed of sound. How can we have supersonic aircraft operating? Aircraft is operating at higher than the speed of sound, but the exit velocity itself is at the speed of sound. How can supersonic aircrafts operate with convergent nozzles? We had discussed this before the midterm.
Temperature is higher than normal atmospheric temperature, so sonic velocity for that is higher.
Yes, good. Temperature is higher at the nozzle exit velocity, exit condition. So even at sonic condition, the velocity is higher at the nozzle exit as compared to the aircraft velocity. Although the aircraft is supersonic, means the aircraft Mach number is calculated with respect to the ambient temperature, ambient velocity, ambient sonic velocity. Okay, so even if the aircraft is supersonic with respect to ambient condition, the exhaust velocity will still be higher even if it is at sonic velocity. Obviously, otherwise there cannot be any thrust. So obviously, this has to be the case. So for convergent nozzles with choked condition, some thrust is recovered due to pressure thrust. Okay. Okay, I have already noted this. Sonic velocity increases with temperature, so although flight speed is supersonic at ambient condition, exhaust speed is higher even at sonic condition. Okay. So let us try to find out the velocity, okay, for the choked condition. So we will denote this critical pressure as PC and critical temperature as TC. Sometimes this is also denoted as P star and T star. Okay. So one case we have already seen, the case for the unchoked nozzle. Okay, so I will not go into the details of that. We have seen the unchoked nozzle when this P04 by PA, okay, is less than P04 by PC. Okay, so it means that PA is greater than PC. Okay, critical pressure. So in that case, the exit pressure will be equal to the ambient pressure, and the nozzle will not be at the choked condition. We can easily calculate in that case. Okay, so exit pressure will be P5. So the ideal nozzle will have a temperature at the exit equal to T5S. So T04 by T5S, which is an isentropic process. For this isentropic process, we can find T5S using the isentropic relation. P04 by T5S equal to P04 by P5 to the power gamma G minus 1 by gamma G. This will give us T5S, and then from the nozzle efficiency, which is defined as T04 minus T5 by T04 minus T5S, we can get what is T5. And then ultimately we get, once you know what is T5, we can get the exit velocity as. So exit kinetic energy is half V5 square is equal to change in enthalpy, which is Cp T04 minus T5. Okay, or V5 is equal to root over 2 Cp T04 minus T5. This is valid for unchoked nozzle. For choked condition, P04 by PA is greater than P04 by PC, or it means that PA is less than PC. Okay, ambient pressure is less than the choke pressure. So the actual pressure at the exit will be equal to PC, not PA. And then there will be a jump outside, as we have already discussed. We'll keep this diagram open. On the right hand side is for the choked condition. Okay. So what happens is that ideally, so if the nozzle was ideal nozzle without any friction, you would have gone from 0.4 to 5S. Okay, where this 5S was a point, or would have been a point on the critical pressure line. Okay, so the exit pressure would have been equal to the critical pressure, and one minute just. Okay, it will be slightly confusing to you. Okay. Let us consider the actual case first, okay, instead of going to the ideal case, because it is better that way. So in actual case, what is happening? There are frictional losses. So the entropy is increasing, and we are going from 0.4 to the condition 5. Okay. So this condition 5 is at the critical pressure. Okay. Condition 5 is at the critical pressure. Okay. For the actual nozzle. Okay. Well, we will come to what is critical pressure for the actual nozzle and what is critical pressure for the ideal nozzle. These two are not analogous. These two are different things. Okay. So for the actual nozzle, say there is a critical pressure, okay, at which the nozzle becomes choked. So we'll reach that pressure so that the nozzle becomes choked. Okay. So at that point, the state is 5 and the temperature is T5 and pressure is P5. Okay. And it is on the constant pressure line PC. Okay. So the change in enthalpy in this case is H04 minus H5. So remember that even if there are frictional losses, the stagnation enthalpy does not change because frictional losses themselves manifest as heat. So ultimately they just change they will, so we'll get less kinetic energy, but the overall enthalpy will remain same. Okay, overall enthalpy in the nozzle will still remain same. So H05 is equal to H04. Okay, but what has happened is that instead of going from 04 to 5s for an ideal case, we are going from 04 to 5. Okay, for an actual case. So if the nozzle was ideal, okay, if the nozzle was ideal, the change in enthalpy would have been the same. Okay, why? Because we would have reached the critical velocity, means we would have reached the sonic velocity. So ultimately the sonic velocity depends on what? The sonic velocity depends on change in enthalpy, right? So for the same change in enthalpy, we would have reached the sonic velocity. Whether the nozzle has frictional losses or not, it does not matter. So the change in, so the increase in velocity is just related to the decrease in enthalpy. So for the same decrease in enthalpy, we would have reached the sonic velocity for an ideal case. So for an ideal nozzle, at this point, okay, we can draw it. This is slightly tricky to understand. So at this point itself, we would have reached the sonic velocity. Okay, so while going from here to here, at this point itself, we would have reached the sonic velocity because the change in enthalpy would have been sufficient to reach the sonic velocity. Okay, so in that case, the critical pressure would have been the pressure at this point. Okay, so this pressure, as we can see from the diagram, is higher as compared to the critical pressure for the actual nozzle. Okay, so this critical pressure is known as critical pressure for the isentropic nozzle. Okay, so PC for the isentropic flow, which passes through this point. And what is this point? This point is at the same temperature as the actual exit temperature. Okay, so this point is the critical temperature. This point corresponds to the actual critical temperature, but under isentropic condition. Okay. So again, let us revise this. In real life, what is happening? We are going from 04 to 5. Okay, and as a result, the velocity is increasing, and velocity is reaching the sonic velocity. The stagnation enthalpy still remains same. H05 is equal to H04. Static enthalpy has decreased from 04 to 5. Okay, so this is the decrease in the static enthalpy, static temperature. So this multiplied by Cp will give the decrease in static enthalpy, and this results in the increase in kinetic energy. Okay, so the kinetic energy has reached to such a level so that the exit velocity is sonic velocity. In ideal condition also, this would have been the change in temperature for which we would have reached the same kinetic energy. So the nozzle would have been choked in that condition. But the pressure at that point would have been different. It would have been higher, as you can see from the constant pressure line. Okay, so what is happening is that because of frictional losses, the critical pressure is reduced from the critical pressure for an ideal condition. Okay, although the critical temperature remains same, critical temperature is still same, okay, but the critical pressure is reduced. So we have to calculate based on this new critical pressure. We have to find out what is the nozzle exit velocity. Okay. Any questions here? It will be clear in a minute, or when we solve a problem in the next class. So this is same diagram. Okay, this is the same diagram. Choked condition. Efficiency of the nozzle is again defined in the same way. Okay. So actual change T04 minus T5 by the ideal change T04 minus T5s. Okay, assuming that we could have expanded to this point. We could not have expanded to this point, even if the nozzle was ideal. we would have stopped at this point because nozzle would have reached the choked condition. But if we could have expanded to this point such that we could have reached the actual critical pressure, at that point, whatever would have been the change in enthalpy, that is the ideal change in enthalpy in the denominator, and the actual change in enthalpy is T04 minus T5. Okay, it is very important to note here that this point we could not have achieved. Okay, we would have stopped at this higher point only because nozzle would have got choked at that condition only. But this is like a theoretical point to define the nozzle efficiency. For choked condition, the velocity, exhaust gas velocity is equal to the sonic velocity. Okay, so the sonic velocity is equal to root over gamma r T5. Okay, where T5 is the exit temperature. T5 is equal to critical temperature Tc. Okay, so if you know what is critical temperature Tc, we can find out the sonic velocity or the exhaust gas velocity, and from that we can calculate the thrust. Okay, so now our target is to find T5. Okay, this diagram is still open here. This is the same diagram, so let us keep this open here. I have already discussed this, so just to summarize, say for non-isentropic flow, P04 by Pc is the pressure ratio, which gives the Mach number at the exit equal to 1. Okay, critical temperature ratio is same for isentropic. Whether it is an isentropic flow or an irreversible adiabatic flow, critical temperature ratio remains same because the stagnation temperature does not change. Now, which means that T04 equal to T05 for all adiabatic flows. Okay, so which we have already discussed. Even if there is frictional loss, the stagnation temperature remains same. So T04 by T5 can be also written as T05 by T5 is equal to 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2 M5 square. This we have already seen in the previous class. We have seen that how this is related, right? So stagnation to the static temperature is related in terms of, I will just recap it. Okay. T0A by TA is 1 plus. So basically T0 is TA plus VA square by 2Cp. This is the relation between stagnation and static temperature, or T0A by TA is 1 plus VA square by 2Cp TA. Okay, and this Cp we had written as gamma r by gamma minus 1. It can be easily derived to be equal to gamma r by gamma minus 1. And we replace this Cp here by gamma r by gamma minus 1. We get 1 plus VA square by 2 gamma r by gamma minus 1 TA. So T0A by TA is 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2 VA square by gamma r TA. And this gamma r TA is nothing but square of the sonic velocity, CS square. So VA square by CS square gives us Mach number square. So the stagnation to static temperature is related as 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2 ms square. Always for any isentropic or adiabatic flow, okay, T0A by TA will be equal to 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2 ms square. Okay, let us come back to it. So in this case, T05 by T5 is 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2. Here the gamma is gamma of the gas into Mach number square. Okay, it is valid for any portion of the nozzle, not only at the exit. For any portion of the nozzle, this relation is true. Okay, so at the exit, the Mach number is equal to the sonic Mach number, which is 1. Right, M5 is 1 at choked condition. So in that case, this becomes equal to 1 plus gamma minus 1 by 2. Okay, which is equal to gamma plus 1 by 2. Okay, so T05 by T5 is equal to gamma plus 1 by 2, or T05 by critical temperature. T05 is equal to T04. So T04 by critical temperature. T04 is the inlet temperature. So inlet temperature by critical temperature is related by this very simple relation, gamma plus 1 by 2. Okay, gamma of gas in this case. So if we know what is the inlet temperature, we can directly find out what should be the critical temperature. It does not depend on the frictional losses. For any nozzle, the critical temperature will be equal to, it will be related to the inlet temperature by gamma plus 1 by 2. It only depends on the inlet temperature and gamma. So Tc is equal to 2 by gamma plus 1 by. So I am just saying gamma, but always it is gamma of the gas. Okay. So Tc is equal to 2 by gamma plus 1 into T04. Okay. So now the nozzle efficiency, the way we have defined, nozzle efficiency is T04 minus T5 by T04 minus T5s. Okay. Or T04 minus T5s is equal to 1 by eta n T04 minus T5. Remember, T5 is equal to critical temperature Tc. So we can rewrite this T5s to be equal to, we can take this T5s to the other side and this entire term to the left side. So T5 is equal to T04 minus 1 by eta n T04 minus T5. Okay. Now remember that P5 by what is P5? P5 is the actual exit velocity pressure. Okay, this corresponds to this line. P5 by P04 for this isentropic process going from here to here for this isentropic process. So P5s is equal to P5. So P5 by P04 is equal to T5s by T04 to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. Okay, or P5 is equal to P04 into T5s by T04. P5 is equal to P04 into T5s by T04 to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. Okay, so P5 is equal to P04 into this term. So what is this term? T5s by T04. You can divide T5s by T04. We will get 1 minus 1 by eta n 1 minus Tc by T04. Okay, this is within the bracket. The entire thing is within the bracket to the power gamma g by gamma g minus 1. So this gives us the critical pressure for a nozzle which is non-ideal, okay, where there are frictional losses. This critical pressure is different from the critical pressure for an isentropic nozzle. Okay, these two are different. Although the critical temperature is same, the critical pressure is different. And you will be able to easily verify that this critical pressure is lower than the critical pressure for the isentropic nozzle. Okay. This is the expression. So when we are solving numerically, don't memorize this expression. We should go through the steps and actually find out what will be the pressure. But if you want to write in expression form, this is the expression. Okay. So because we know that Tc by T04 is related, Tc by T04 is 2 by gamma plus 1. We can write that, we can replace this Tc by T04 as 2 by gamma plus 1. Okay, so we will get P5 is equal to P04 1 minus 1 by eta n gamma plus 1 minus 2. So gamma minus 1. So gamma minus 1 by gamma plus 1. So finally the expression can be written as P5 is equal to P04 into 1 minus 1 by eta n gamma minus 1 by gamma plus 1 whole to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. Don't memorize this. Okay, you should be able to derive this. You should not use this as a formula while solving a problem. You should try to derive or try to actually calculate the different parameters like Tc, Pc, things like that. Okay. So P5 can be calculated from the above expression for the choked condition. Okay. Why is P5 needed? Because we could have calculated the choke temperature directly from this expression. Okay, and that would have given us the exit velocity. Because exit velocity, remember, it is nothing but root over gamma at T5. So gamma root over gamma at T5 is root over gamma at Tc. And Tc we can calculate based on this expression. T04 is known based on the turbine exit condition. So we can calculate the exit velocity. So then why do we need to calculate P5? We need to calculate P5. That is for sure. Can you say why is it needed? To calculate what is our aim? What are we trying to calculate for an engine?
Pressure.
Correct, correct. So we want to calculate the thrust of an engine, and the thrust in this case will comprise of the momentum thrust, which we can easily calculate based on T5. But we also need to calculate the pressure thrust, because the pressure thrust will not be negligible now, as P5 is greater than PA. Okay. So P5 can be calculated from this above expression. We should actually calculate it step by step, but it is given by this expression. Okay. So the pressure thrust is equal to P5 minus PA into area of the exit, which is A5. Now the exit area is equal to, so the mass flow rate can be written as density into velocity into area. Okay, mass flow rate is rho 5 A5 V5 at the exit. Okay, so the exit velocity is equal to the sonic velocity, which we can already calculate, which is equal to C5, which is equal to gamma into R into T5 root over that. Okay, this is the exit velocity, and the density at the exit is critical density. Okay, this is equal to, so rho is again using ideal gas law, rho is equal to P by RT. Okay, so rho C is equal to PC by RTC. So critical pressure here we have just calculated is equal to P5. Okay, so P5 by RT5. Okay, so this will give us the density. Okay, so the area will be equal to m dot by rho 5 V5. This gives us the exit area for a given mass flow rate, and by calculating the exit area, we can calculate the pressure thrust, and momentum thrust we can directly calculate. Okay, we can directly calculate based on the V5 exit velocity. Okay. So you should be able to solve a simple problem. Okay, say the inlet pressure is, sorry, the ambient pressure is 0.2 atmospheric pressure. Okay, and the inlet pressure to the nozzle is 1.2 atmospheric pressure. The inlet temperature to the nozzle is 800 Kelvin. Ambient temperature is 230 Kelvin. These are all realistic values. Okay, nozzle efficiency is 0.9. Try to calculate what is the exit pressure. Okay, we will continue this discussion in the next class. Next class is tomorrow itself, right? Tomorrow morning. This compensatory class we will do sometime later. Okay, when my health is slightly better. Because I'm struggling to take classes this week. So anyway, try to just solve this to get a good understanding of the problem. It's a very simple problem, just I have artificially designed. Okay, so only for the nozzle, but this will give you some idea about your understanding of the nozzle. So we'll stop here and we will continue this discussion in the next class. Let me upload these files. The file section. And attendance I will take directly from the Microsoft Teams. Try to solve this problem before tomorrow. And it's a very small problem just to see your understanding. Stop sharing and stop recording. Any question?